that guy's coming. He's coming for you.
Step into the stick so they can focus. He's gonna push him back. Go farther. Tell him to move back.
Hermano, lo metió.
Why you didn't just charge him?
I know, good.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Naples Zoo and our Gator Bay feeding session, sponsored by Subaru of Naples. My name is Bailey, and with me today is Scott, and we are a couple of the reptile keepers here at the zoo. Within this bay, we have 12 American alligators. 5 of them are males and 7 of them are females, and they range in ages from our youngest being estimated in their around their 30s, and our oldest being essentially over 80 years old. Now, we don't have exact names or ages for any of our alligators in this bay because they did all come from different facilities that were unable to have their exact hatch date. But we can make some pretty educated guesses on their ages based on the size that they were when they came here and how long they have been here. Now, our oldest alligator is actually our largest alligator, and that is Big Red, and he is all the way over to your left, kind of hanging out. And he is 12 feet 5 inches, 600 pounds, and he came to us in the 1970s.
Wow.
And ever since he came to this bay, he has been able to maintain his spot as the top dog in the bay. Alligators actually have an extremely complex social hierarchy, and they do adhere to it, and no matter what has happened and how long he has been here, he has always maintained that spot. So he'll always be in this one spot every day during his feeding, and a lot of the alligators will actually kind of line up according to where he is positioned. Now, even though we do call this our feeding session, it is more accurately described as a training session, because all of the food that they need is actually already in the water. This is a naturally fed lake, so there is plenty of fish and turtles, birds, occasional raccoons that do hang around and that they can feast on. But they do choose to come here at 3 o'clock every day because they know that if they come here, they're going to get some easy treats. You might have noticed that Scott started out, and before it looked like he asked them to do anything, he was already feeding them. But that is actually because they were doing one of the most important behaviors that we have trained them to do, which is to stay in the water when we approach the beach, which is great because there are 12 of them. And if all 12 of them didn't know that they need to stay in the water when we approach the gate, we would have them all up here, and it could be very dangerous for us to be able to come out here. So that's what he was doing first thing, was he was reinforcing that behavior of having them all stay in the water when we entered the beach. Now from there, he's going to start training other behaviors that are really helpful. These guys can do a lot of different things. They are able to be trained very similar to your dog. And so they all know their names. They all come to when their name is called. They all will hold on a cue. They will back up on a cue. They all have their own targets. Target pole that we use basically just a broomstick with a frisbee on the end, and each one of them has a different frisbee that goes to them. They can see in color, so each one has a different colored frisbee that they know, and that they will come and they will touch their nose to that for reinforcement. Now that target allows us to train more complex behaviors from there, and so from using that target, it allows us to be able to more easily move them up on the beach and ask them around. It also allows us to train other things like having them come up and weigh themselves, having them do voluntary blood draws, and it allows them to do voluntary radiographs. So most of the training that we do with them is for husbandry purposes. What that means is for us helping with the vet staff, being able to take care of them. So behaviors that allow the vet staff to work with them as safely as possible, and that also allow for there to be as little stress as possible when we are trying to take care of them, because we definitely want their experience with us to be very positive. So just like the rest of the animals at the zoo, most of our training is focused on being able to care for them as stress-free as possible and as positively as possible. Now, even though Scott has been doing this, Mama's deciding she wants attention. So we're coming into breeding season right now, and so this is the time of the year when the alligators do start to get a little bit more rowdy, and sometimes their listening skills are not always the best. And so it makes it a little bit more fun when we are out here on the beach. There's definitely a lot more action that tends to happen. But like I was saying, so even though you're seeing Scott come out here and he is feeding these alligators and trading them, he's been doing this for over a decade, you are not going to see him doing this in the wild. And that is for good reason. Not only is it extremely dangerous, but it is illegal to feed or harass any American alligator. Now the reason for that is pretty simple. You can see here that these alligators do have a great ability to learn, and it really doesn't take much for them to be able to pick up on different behaviors, including, it's great to see Scar whenever he is in target. Very enthusiastic. I don't know if you saw that. But it just takes feeding an alligator one time for them to start to associate people with food. And it could be something very innocent, like you're walking along and you're going on a nice hike with your friends, and maybe you're eating some food and you no longer want that food item, and you see an alligator and you think to yourself, well, I don't want this food anymore. I'm gonna have to carry it back. What's the harm in just tossing it to this animal? And then that harm is that they do associate people with food. And alligators are an animal that does naturally actually tend to fear us, or at least want nothing to do with us. And so by feeding them that one time, you're taking an animal that normally when they were going to see you, they would walk away or at least stay put, turn that animal into something that will come up towards you and approach you for food. And when that does happen, unfortunately, then alligators tend to be deemed nuisance animals. And once they are called a nuisance animal in a community, the only way that we can safely ensure the safety of the community is to permanently remove that alligator from the environment. We have tried doing different things like relocating them, but unfortunately relocating them to different areas only leads to them being nuisance alligators in those areas. So permanent removal is the only option, and that's definitely not something that we want to have happen. Because alligators are extremely important to their environment, which is here in Florida. They are native to here, over in Texas, up into the Carolinas, and they are a keystone species, which means that they're an animal that if they were no longer present here, we would definitely start to see a lot of negative effects. We would start to see the slow collapse of this ecosystem. The way that they are able to help out their environment so much is actually something that you're starting to get a chance to see now. You're starting to see that when you come to the zoo, there's a lot of birds that are building their nests above the alligators. And at the height of breeding season, you'll see that there will be birds completely filling up right above these guys. And it might seem silly that birds that are definitely on the menu for alligators are choosing to build their nests above them. But they do this actually on purpose. They'll do this to ensure their young's best chance at survival. Mama's just living right now. And so, because there are a lot of other animals that really are very good at climbing trees and getting at the nest, like raccoons and things like that, smaller mammals, by deciding to build their nest above the alligators, they're deterring those small mammals, and that's better ensuring these birds' chance of survival. And so they're very important to our birds here. They're also very important to ensuring the fresh water that we have in this area, because alligators are kind of known as the vultures of the freshwater. And that is because they're an animal that is able to and willing to eat carrion. Their stomachs can handle any kind of carrion. They're very, very hardy stomachs. And they also are very opportunistic. So by doing that, they ensure clean water for us. Now, even though they are so important, we did almost see what it would look like if we were to no longer have alligators present in Florida. Because back in the 1950s, we actually almost saw them go extinct. There was a lot of development that was happening at the time, and also a lot of hunting that didn't have as many regulations for different reasons, like food and fashion products. That all culminated into us almost completely losing the American alligator. But even though people did have a lot to do with the potential demise of the alligator, we had everything to do with their resurgence. And that is because we banded together and put them on the endangered species list, which allowed there to be captive breeding programs that started and allowed for the resurgence of the American alligator. So these guys are definitely a great success story for conservation. So I know that sometimes it can seem a little bit, it can seem pretty dismal sometimes when you hear about a lot of our animals that are struggling with this changing environment, and it can seem like there isn't much we can do, but these guys are definitely a great example of that we can do a lot to help them out. And actually, something that you guys did today, you already helped out a lot more animals than you might have realized, because buying a ticket at the Naples Zoo, you're helping to support conservation efforts all over the world that we're affiliated with. We help out a lot of different animals all over the world. Some of them include tigers in Asia, giant eaters in South America, and even Florida panthers in our own backyard. So by coming here and choosing to spend your day at the zoo, you have made a huge difference already. So I want to thank you guys so much for coming out here. It really does make a difference. And I hope you guys do enjoy the rest of your day at the Naples Zoo. All right, it looks like